Okay, part two. Um, Control types of clothing and hairstyles. I would say this wasn't an issue because we were the goal of Melrose was to attract the alternative generation. But the Sea Org still, when they would visit, they had to adhere to their dress code. Um, Regulate diet, food, hunger, and fasting. I mean, the amount of money that we made pretty much prevented all of us from eating properly. Um, and a lot of times you didn't get to eat because you're too busy during the day. Manipulation and deprivation of sleep. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much everyone was subject to that, and it was kind of self-regulating. If you overslept, someone would wake you up, because they didn't get to sleep, and they've got targets to meet and whatever, and it's all a team thing, a group saving the planet, whatever. So it's self-regulatory. Misery loves company, after all. So you become pretty much mentally and theologically bonded to your staff over time. You start to, yeah, I got to get up. I got to save the planet. I got to save the planet, man. What am I doing with my life? I'm such a failure. I'm working 16 hours a day and I can't get one person in on lines on a communication course. What the hell is wrong with me? So it becomes a pretty sick contest of who can get people involved in this cult. Financial exploitation, manipulation, or dependence. I mean, I was debt free when I joined the church, uh, and when I left, I mean, I was in debt just for materials auditing and donations to about $50,000. Just like the guy said on Louis Theroux, or Louis, I can't call him Louis Theroux. There was a guy who was about that much in debt. Um, so let's see here, and I had the credit to do it. I mean, I had the money. I had the ability to tap into that money. I could have invested it. Wish I had, but I wasted it. You know. Um, let's see. Restrict leave, leisure, um, entertainment, vacation time. All right. So I'll explain it like this, because most of you have regular jobs in the real world. But in order to get time off from post, you have to get an approved CSW. CSW stands for completed staff work. And it would be like, in order for you to get time off at your regular job in the normal world, you would have to provide documentation to show that you did your job that day in order to get a day off. And essentially, it's just a bureaucratic measure to complicate a simple thing like I need a day off and let others in the group review and decide whether or not you deserve a day off. So imagine you and your work pool. Say you work at an industrial plant, and there's a lot of different people work there. Some people like you, some people don't. Let's say you're a big stickler for safety and you want people to be safe, but there's people that are shortcutting safety precautions, and you've written them up or you've done whatever. For you to get a day off, you've got to convince not only your supervisor but all of your peers, uh, because that supervisor is going to then most likely bring it up at the meeting in the morning or in the afternoon, or call a meeting and say Marcus has a CSW for time off. Well, should we give it to him? That's kind of how it goes. Or the executive will just say no right then and there. Or if you're extremely upstat, then they might approve it right then and there. Or if you're upstat but you haven't been upstat for a long time, then most likely they'll call a meeting. Anyways, let's There you go. Major time spent with group indoctrination and rituals of self-indoctrination, including the internet. Well, the internet was off limits, pretty much. You could go on it, but any computers at the mission were very, very limited and controlled, and tons of things blocked. But in session, you're always asked if you been online or gone online and read anything. And if anything read on the meter, then it would almost immediately go to, well, were you online recently? Yeah. Okay. So if you were into making case gain and doing the Scientological principles and trying to make headway on that whole thing, then it was in your best interest to just stay off the internet, because it would just cost you more money in session time. Sometimes Sunday services, we had them, basically what it was, group hypnosis, and doing TRs, sitting in chairs staring at each other. New people into the organization, which is NBSTI, that was a statistic that we kept track of. It was a big goal for us to get them on upper indoctrination as soon as possible, which sounds so obvious, upper indoctrination. You have your training routines, and those are one of the first things you do in the communication course, which is the cheapest course you can do. And it lays the groundwork of being able to be sort of like a stale, blank slate, willing to take some abuse and tolerate some ideas that you don't necessarily agree with for the greater good. Okay? Upper indoctrination is all about control and putting intention into things. Very well demonstrated on the new documentary from BBC, because, get this, Marty actually shows how he could take someone like Louis Theroux, who's never had any Scientology training that we know of so far, and show him and give an example of how Louis can use his intention alone to communicate a point. And I didn't think it was going to work, but sure enough, it did. It just proves the point, because I have my own doubts sometimes too, but about intention and how that affects other, how intention affects communication. So those crazy looks that Tom Cruise gives, those are all intense. He's intensely indoctrinated. Permission required for major decisions. One time I had to ask for permission to go home for Christmas, and when I asked the mission holder, she said, "Oh, we've already got those arrangements set up. My brother and I were supposed to be going home together to our family." Well, she said, "No, he's not going home with you for Christmas. He's going to his girlfriend. He's going back to his girlfriend in Mississippi, and his family over there too." And I asked her why, and she said, "Well, if he goes with you, then he's going to blow. You're going to blow." And I said, "No, if he goes with her, he's going to blow. Mark my words on that." And I said that in front of the whole executive board. This is one of the reasons they did not like me. I was always in ethics. All right, I'm not. The mission holder, Kathy, was treated like some kind of goddess. And I don't care who the hell you are. That's something that was never, even whenever I was at my lowest, when she would walk by, I don't give a shit. I'll talk to her just like I talk to anybody else. And that was very frowned upon, and they thought it was very disrespectful, because how could I, this leech on the belly of Scientology who's not contributing, talk to someone who's changing the world? Fuck that. Pardon my French. My son's watching TV right now, so it's all good. So I didn't never back off from Kathy or Tom, and this was an executive meeting over who's going home for Christmas with who. So, a full table, of people from the Ventura mission. And I told him, I said, look, when they get back, they're just going to leave. Well, that ended up happening. So, um, after that, there was no apology. There was like, oh yeah, you were right, because you would think as Scientologists they lost 2 people, and I sat there and told the entire executive board, including auditors and the public executive secretary, HCO, told everybody, we're going to lose 2 people if he goes home with her. That's how much of a dedicated Scientologist I was. But I don't know. Thoughts, feelings, and activities of self and others reported to superiors, without a doubt, always. Rewards and punishments used to modify behaviors, both positive and negative. Like I said, I scrubbed that wood floor with mineral oil until my fingers were so saturated that like my fingernails were like not popping off, but they were kind of like melting off. I don't know how to describe it. My fingernails were getting warped and just coming off. It was very painful. Discourage individualism, encourage groupthink. Greatest good for the greatest number dynamics. That translates into make every decision on the basis of, is this good for Scientology? That's what it amounts to. Impose rigid rules and regulations. Kind of a tricky subject because you've got HCOPLs and you've got the executive series. You've got these documents that L. Ron Hubbard made or wrote that give you a framework. But after David Miscavige took over, I think most of that, it was just sort of like fly by the seat of your pants, make money, IAS. But at a certain point in time, and it was still preserved to some degree at the Baton Rouge, Ventura, and Melrose missions, and probably the mission that they had in Ireland and Germany too, to follow HCOPL and the executive orders. So, problem is that people would start to interpret them differently. I can't give you an example right off the top of my head. There are thousands of these policy letters and executive orders. So you can just take your pick, really. What do you want to manipulate this person to do? Find a policy letter that you can either use or make it seem like that's what the policy letter means, with word clearing and stuff like that. So, and big realization for me was, you control language, you can control a person with language. Language is very, very powerful. Let's see. Install dependency and obedience. Those weeks we didn't get paid, someone usually did, and so they couldn't, in good conscience, let people starve. So we would have to like pool together our money and our resources. Sometimes I'd get paid and my brother wouldn't get paid. Sometimes he'd get paid and I wouldn't get paid. Sometimes other people would get paid, and whatever. Get what I'm saying. And so we pull our resources together and get food, or gas. I happened to have a van when I moved out there, so it was very useful. We had a lot of, if we needed to truck everybody over to the organization, everyone basically paid for my gas because it was very expensive. But that tightens the connection with the group. It creates unit cohesion, what they call in military unit cohesion. Let's see. And that's about as far as I got. Threaten harm to family or friends. I guess the only threat that I ever felt was the thing with my brother. But it turned out to be a good thing because he got out earlier than I did. Force an individual to rape or be raped. Never saw that. Instill dependency and obedience. Again, that goes up to the thing I was just saying about, unit cohesion. Okay, so that all that out of the way, I still have more to go on the bite model. That's just the behavioral aspect. So I guess I'll title this part one, behavioral control, Steve Hassan's bite model, something like that, and an update that I'm back and still got some more to say. So if you're willing to listen, then I'm going to talk. Big fan of Leah Remini and what she's doing. I have not seen the show. I've purposefully avoided it, kind of because I've lived it, you know, kind of like Bob Shapiro said whenever he was approached by a TMZ interviewer. He said, the interviewer asked him, "Have you watched the movie?" Or he's like, "No, I live the movie." You know, there are some things that I am interested in watching. I'm very interested in Marty Rathbun. Uh, I'm kind of with Jeff Hawkins on this. I think that there's still a lot of things that Marty has not said, and that's probably to protect himself. If I had to guess, it's to protect himself from an admission to guilt of something incredibly terrible. I I find it awfully odd and and fortuitous, even not fortuitous in a good way. Uh, I guess that wouldn't be the right word. I find it very um, well, it's just depressing, to be honest. But there's another word for it, and it's kind of conspiratory. It's a kind of conspiratory thought that I'm having here. But after the master was released, uh, somehow or another, a man who had been clean from heroin for years started using drugs again. Philip Seymour Hoffman. Uh, it's terrible. He was such a great talent, and you got to understand that I'm just looking at it from my 2 year staff experience and how I watched The Master, and I thought it was a pretty cool movie. Um, I wish they would have been more true to what kind of monster this guy was. They touched on it a little bit, but had I been a staff member, Scientologist, there is no words to describe the offense that would be taken to that. And if you think about the fair game policy, um, and how destructive, as a Scientologist in your mind, how destructive a movie like that could be about, basically uh, condemning your Messiah, Um, I don't know if Philip Seymour Hoffman, uh, ultimately he made that choice. I think I think so. But there may have been someone there to sort of urge him on, if that makes any sense, to provide the opportunity, because that's how Scientologists work. They don't want to be liable, so um, that's the way a Scientologist would if they knew that he had a problem with heroin, prescription drugs, um, they could easily worm someone into his life, because I've been that worm before. Um, Never done anything like what I'm describing. I promise, swear to God. Uh, but it would be very easy to get someone to worm themselves into his life and subtly reintroduce him to a drug that could kill him, because of his appetites. Um, and then once he was using the drugs, it would have been easy to make it look like a suicide or an overdose. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm not making allegations. I'm just talking in a conspiratory manner. And I'll end off with that. Um, I hope you enjoyed the video. And that was part one of me going over the Steve Hassan's bite model. I'll go over the rest when I have time. I've been making notes on a little asides about, you know, the four categories are behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. So those are the four things to look forward to. We've just done the behavioral control, and I gave my 2 cents on that. So if you like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.